Matthew is sitting, minding his own business. Well, minding everyone's business. He's a tax collector, and there he is sitting in his tax booth one day when Jesus comes along, and everything changes. Hi, welcome to St Ninian's Church in Stonehouse. My name's Stuart, and I get to be the minister here. It's brilliant to have you with us today, wherever you find yourself, and no matter where you are, or who you are, or even what you've done, remember that you are loved. You can find out all about who we are and what we do on our website at st-ninians-stonehouse.org.uk.
Matthew 9 verses 9 to 11, then 18 to 26. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax collection station, and he said to him, "Follow me," and he got up and followed him. And as he sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with Jesus and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." When he was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from a flow of blood for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she was saying to herself, "If I only touch this cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, and your faith has made you well." The woman was made well from that moment. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand. The girl got up, and the report of this spread through all that district.
Matthew was working in his tax booth like every other day. Every other day he sat on his wee wooden stool in his wee wooden hut, oppressing his neighbours. Matthew's job was to take the empire's cut from all the fish that was landed, all the goods that were transported, and all the things that were traded, and to grass on anyone who didn't pay up, or who he thought wasn't declaring all of their income. And people hated him. They hated all the tax collectors. Not just the way that we joke about the tax man. People despised the tax collectors. How could he sit there all day, every day, heaping misery on the people who were supposed to be his friends? And at the very least, the people who were his neighbours. And neighbour's a big word in that society, because you have responsibility to your neighbours. You're supposed to treat them well. You're supposed to look after them. You're supposed to show your neighbours justice and mercy. Matthew had seen the teacher around. He knew all about what he'd said and everything he'd done. Matthew had his ear to the ground. And people liked to talk. And there was something about Jesus, something different. Jesus wasn't like the other religious guys. They were all puffed up and full of their own importance. They swanned about with their airs and their graces and their holier-than-thou attitudes. And for them, everything was about rituals. Doing the right thing, saying the right thing, and all of that at the right time. They called it observance. But mostly the observing that went on was the religious leaders watching everyone else and commenting on their faults and failings. One day, Matthew was just sitting in his toll booth, just minding his own, actually minding everyone else's business, when along came Jesus. And some of his new followers He knew most of them. He had plenty of dealings with Peter and Andrew and James and John. They were fishermen. They needed a license for that, and Matthew was the one who sorted that out. And he was the one that they paid their tax to when they landed their fish. It's fair to say that Matthew wasn't their favourite. But that was nothing compared to what Simon thought of him. Simon was a full-on political revolutionary. A zealot, they called them. He was always causing bother. Civil disobedience, I think, was what he called it. Perhaps now we would call it direct action. Always against the Romans, but nobody could ever prove it was him. And he was always hassling Matthew and all the other tax collectors because they were collaborators. It wasn't as if Matthew had chosen this job. He'd pretty much been, forced into it. He lived in Galilee. It's not like there's loads of opportunities. He was pretty smart. Too smart to fish. In another life, somewhere bigger, he would have been a merchant. But that takes capital. And his family didn't have that kind of money. So here he was, taxing the people he had once called friends. And sure, the money was okay, and there was always the opportunity to make a bit more here and there. But the cost was bigger. His only friends now were people who were like him, tax collectors, and, some of those women that everybody makes a big show of being, appalled by, but always seem to have trade, those women. As Matthew sat there in his booth, sweltering in the sun, Jesus came over. Jesus had never done that before. In fact, that was really odd, Matthew thought. Jesus had no discernible income. It never ceased to amaze Matthew how famous people always thought that tax didn't apply to them. As Matthew was planning the investigation in his head, bold as you like, Jesus walks up. In front of everyone, he says, "You, follow me." Follow me. It was hard to decide whether it was a question or a proposition or a command. But Matthew did. Right there and then, he stood up, walked out of his tax booth, left the queue waiting, didn't even put up his back in 5 minutes sign, and went. Oblivious to the commotion. He didn't see the mild look of amusement on the fishermen's faces, or the complete consternation on Simon's. All Matthew saw was Jesus. Later on, he found that moment hard to describe to other people, even harder to understand. It was as if Jesus had looked right into his soul. As if he'd never been seen in that way by anyone before. With love. An absolutely overwhelming sense of love. And that was it. That was it. He would never go back to taxing people again. But what happened next was surprising even to him. Matthew threw Jesus a party. Jesus and his disciples came to Matthew's house to celebrate his, retirement? Let's call it that for now. And like any party in any small town, people notice, Matthew's having a party. Matthew's parties are legendary. Always the wrong kind of people at Matthew's parties. That's what makes them great. All the people who are good at parties, but not so good at church on Sunday mornings. Matthew's friends start to show up. Pretty soon the house is full and it starts to spew out onto the pavement. People are eating and drinking and meeting Jesus and listening to him and wondering, what's he doing here? What's he doing with Matthew? And come to think of it, why is he talking to us? Matthew's pals aren't the only ones who have noticed the hilarity. The party has spilled out into the courtyard and onto the street, and the purity police are out in force. It's like a competition to see who could tut the loudest, who could roll their eyes the hardest. Look at him. Look at him. Eating and drinking with that lot. What does he think he's doing? And suddenly, there was a hush. You could feel the wave of shame washing across the crowd. All those years have been told that you're nothing, you don't matter, you don't belong here. Eyes that had been full of joy for the first time in a long, long time were suddenly downcast. All those feelings welling up inside them. Of course, Jesus was religious, so he's going to agree, isn't he? He's one of them. He's a holy man. He's always at the synagogue. He always goes to Jerusalem for the festivals. He's always talking about God. Of course, he'll take their side. The disciples smile at each other, raise one of those knowing eyebrows. This'll be fun. Matthew saw it, but he didn't really understand what the faces were for. What did they know that nobody else did? He was sure that his guests were about to get roasted. Now, there's a question at the heart of all of this. Who are you here for? It's the one question that we're all afraid to be asked, and the one question that we all struggle to answer. Who are you here for? Jesus only ever asked his followers to keep 2 commandments. Love God, love your neighbour. Love God and love your neighbour as you love yourself. And we know the second one gets an upgrade because we're not good at loving ourselves. Just like Matthew and his friends, we don't always have a very high opinion of ourselves. We all struggle to believe that we might be good people, or that we matter, or that we have something to say that's worth listening to, or that anyone could actually love us. If we love people the way that we love ourselves, then, to be perfectly honest, that love's not going to be very good, is it? It's going to be full of struggle. Because we all struggle with our self-worth, our self-image, and so self-love isn't always very high on our agenda. Here's a thought. Perhaps we do treat other people like we treat ourselves. And perhaps that's part of the problem. So Jesus gives us a better example. Love one another like I love you. Jesus sighed. I'm not here for the righteous. I'm not even here for the religious. What? What did he just say? That can't be right, can it? I'm here for those who don't belong. The ones who are your neighbours, but you don't look after. The ones you exclude. The ones that you think are worth less than you. The ones who have no place here, even though their place is right here. I'm here for those people. And with piercing clarity, Jesus asks them, who are you here for? I wonder what our answer to that question is. Who are you here for? And I wonder if there's a wrong answer to that question. Because if you say, I'm here for myself, then I think that's okay. You're here because you want to be, or you need to be, or for whatever reason you found yourself here today. You're here because you are thankful or painfully aware that you're a work in progress, or both at the same time. Just remember the others part. We live in community, and often other people are both the solution and the problem. If your answer is, I'm here for others, then that's okay too. Good. Great. You want to help. You want to support other people. And perhaps you know what that's like when there's nobody there to support you. But remember, in helping other people, we can't neglect ourselves. You can't draw from an empty well. But perhaps there's a third answer. And perhaps the third answer is the one we miss all the time. The first commandment. Love God. Perhaps our answer is, we're here for God. Never has there been a change in atmosphere quite like the one when Jesus' words clattered across the courtyard and landed at the feet of his questioners. Matthew's face beamed. Jesus was here for him. It hadn't really seemed real before. Like it had all been some kind of mistake. But now Jesus had stood in his house and defended him. And his friends. Now it was real. Now it all started to make sense. He'd heard all about Jesus telling people that had nothing that they were blessed. People who were looked down on. People who were sad. And it just seemed really odd at the time. But now it seemed the most sensible thing he'd ever heard. Now it was real. Real for him. Jesus was there for him. Jesus was there for him. And Matthew was going to be there for Jesus and his friends. But then, the next day, things took a really unexpected turn. The leader of the synagogue turned up. He ran to Jesus and he threw himself on the floor in front of everyone. Important people just didn't, run for a start, and they certainly didn't throw themselves at the floor in front of someone like Jesus. Not with these people. The man's daughter was sick. He really, really needed help. And he couldn't think of anyone else who could help, so he begged Jesus. That's so often where we meet Jesus. In our greatest moments of need. When we've completely run out of other options. When we can't think of anyone else. When we, despite all of our knowledge, come up with nothing. Well, not quite nothing. It's in those moments that we come up with God. Let's try that. Jairus is the man's name. Luke's Gospel tells us that. And Jesus says, okay, I'll go. But as they leave for his house, a woman appears. A woman who shouldn't even have been there. Even Matthew was astonished to see her. Everyone knew her. And everyone knew what her problem was. She'd been bleeding for years and nobody could help. And that was the problem. Blood. Blood and people, and particularly holy people, don't mix. There are all kinds of rules about that. But she was at the end of her tether. Nothing to lose and everything to gain. And only one option left. She reaches out, she touches his cloak, and all of a sudden, the bleeding stops. And Jesus turns around and he says, the strangest thing. Your faith has made you well. What? What faith? She didn't say anything. She didn't do anything. There was no ritual, no classes to attend, no testimony to give. It didn't make any sense. All she had was desperation and one last hope. And the hope was the thing she left with. Healed. Healed with everyone watching. No whispers about her now. She had her life back. Meanwhile, news came. The official's daughter is dead. By the time Jesus gets there, the rituals are in full swing. Mourners and sad music. For goodness sake, get out of the way. What? Get out of the way. Off you go, she's only sleeping. And they laughed at him. And then he went, and out they came, as if nothing had happened. The mix of confusion and disbelief gives way to joy. She was alive. She was alive, and that's all they cared about. But Dad knew. He knew that Jesus had spared his little girl. Not just spared her life, but spared her all the questions, all the accusations, all the inquiries. Is this the girl that died? There'd be none of that. Just a little girl who'd been asleep and was now awake. Jesus gives us what we need. But it starts and ends with love. You are loved. All of you. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, no matter what you've done, or who you love, you are loved. It seems such a simple thing to say, doesn't it? You are loved. But to believe it, to believe that that's true, that's not always easy. To live as though it's true, that's a whole other thing. That takes practice. It takes effort. It takes daily reminders, and it takes each other. Loving each other is a choice. And sometimes it's the hardest choice that we ever make. And I don't mean hanging around in a relationship where there is no love. I mean choosing not to give in to hate. Not forgetting, but reaching out in forgiveness, so that we can put down all those burdens that other people have given us to carry. These two stories today, that happen straight after each other, are stories about how that looks and how it feels. This is day one of Matthew being a disciple. This is going to be way better than he could ever imagine. Although, somebody said something about him having to sit next to Simon at dinner. What on earth are they going to talk about? Neighbours with nothing in common and everything in common. Day one. I wonder what we'll do. And day two, as Jesus calls to each one of us, follow me. You are loved. Now go. Go and do that.
Almighty and everlasting God, we thank you that you are the source of life and the conqueror of death. Through your resurrection, we need no longer fear any finality surrounding death or the oppression of hopelessness. We thank you for your transforming power. How often we come to you, weighed down with the pressure of our busy schedules or burdened with worries and doubts, and yet we know that one word from you can change everything. You do not remain behind a barrier of untouchable holiness, but you walk with us through every twist and turn of our lives. Gracious God, we thank you for the gift of your unshakable peace. When the world laughs in mockery or screams in cynicism, you remain steadfast. When we feel written off by others, you remind us that we are uniquely loved by you. When we feel overwhelmed by circumstances beyond our control, you silence our fears and help us to see that your promises are bigger than our problems. Become conscious of those who do not know your peace and who have carried secret burdens for many years. Burdens about failing health, the burden of those who feel stuck in lives they never intended to lead. Those struggling with addiction, mental illness, or a deep-seated shame. The burden of a faith that has become stagnant and a lifestyle that has tried to live up to a standard of goodness that is unattainable. The burden of those who feel trapped by a monotonous life without meaning. The rawness of the burden of a grief for a loved one who died recently or a long time ago. In a moment of silence, we name before you those whose needs are uppermost in our mind this morning. Ever faithful God, help us to trust that you can transform our desperation with the fullness of life that you promise to all who seek you. Help us to fully understand that you see our potential through the lens of grace. Teach us to truly rest only in the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross, and let your church be a place where the stigmatized find a welcome and the broken find wholeness. For all these things we pray as we join together in the words Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.